ride heavy.
Hello, welcome to the Gyst Rewind Podcast, where we bring context to culture. I'm your host, Kobe Taylor. In this show, we'll explore what it is to be a creator and bring new ideas for what it means to be an artist. We also hope to create connections and the opportunity to learn something new within our society. So sit back, relax, and just rewind.
Still did it. It's okay.
You can change it back. I'm gonna do it thing. Get ready. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Gyst Rewind Podcast for bringing context to culture. My name is Kobe,
And Rock Lee, aka Your Dopeness.
and we have.
Maggie Meyer.
This is a special podcast. A big thing about my podcast is like I feel everything's art. I feel people who build buildings are artists. I feel people who are activists are artists. And we have a big time activist in this room right now. So, Maggie, tell us about yourself. Tell us what you do.
Yeah. So I'm Maggie Meyer. I use she, her pronouns. And right now I am the executive director of an organization called Pro-Choice Minnesota. The organization has been around in different iterations since 1966. We're actually the oldest abortion advocacy organization in the state, and I've been there almost 4 years. So I think I'm one of our youngest executive directors and the first person who's not married, which it sounds silly, but I'll get into a little bit of why that is significant.
Okay.
But I've been doing abortion rights work since 2013, I want to say, and working in campaigns since I was like a little baby organizer with a mutual friend, Nick Core, in 2008 for Obama.
I tried to get Nick Core. We're getting him back.
Yeah.
We had some audio issues, but Nick, you're getting back on the show. I got a lot of questions for you, but sorry I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, no, it's all good. And how I got into this work, most of the women in my family are nurses, and we come from small towns in Montana. And so a big part of like the women's movement that people have talked about is this idea that the personal is political. And I truly believe that. And I think this is probably where you and I agree that like there is an art to our storytelling, and our stories are why we get into politics.
Exactly.
And so my story is that most of the women in my family are nurses. I myself am not into gore, so I decided to go into healthcare advocacy instead. But there's also, since we're from like teeny tiny towns, there's a lot of marital abuse and violence and financial control that happens in small towns, especially in the 50s and 60s. And that is a big part of like my family's history. And so nursing was how a lot of the women in my family got out of those small towns. Got their own financial security, but also reproductive rights is one of the most important decisions, or it's about the most important decisions that we make for ourselves, for our bodies, for our families. And like, I don't take the idea of children lightly because, kids cost on average $300,000 over your lifetime.
Right.
And so if you're in a space of control and you don't get to make that decision for yourself, it's going to affect every area of your life. And so that is kind of why I got into this work, is because I was close to my grandma who experienced a lot of marital violence. And she just really inspires me, and I do this work for her.
Shout out Grandma.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So I mean, you kind of got into it, but like, so where'd you grow up? What was childhood like, and all the way through college years? Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah. So I grew up in Western Washington, a town called Olympia. And I moved here for college, but I grew up in a really Catholic family. Our family had the family farm until I was in like middle school, early high school. So we'd go back to Montana all the time. Most of my family is there. And my heart is really in Montana,
Okay.
even though I grew up in Washington. But I came to Minnesota like on a whim for college. I'd been looking at Marquette and University of Chicago and a couple other Midwestern schools. I have an uncle who lives in Rochester, and he was like, you should look at St. Thomas. It's a free application, and they have a great study abroad program. So I applied, and it was cheaper for me to go to St. Thomas than a state school. Because this is so silly. So I didn't go to Eastview, but a lot of folks from Eastview are like, you went there, right? You've always been around. But no, because I'm not from like Apple Valley, I was considered like geographical diversity. And so I got huge amounts of scholarships. And so I was just kind of like, well, if I hate it, I can always move home.
Right.
And I didn't hate it. And here it's 15 years later.
What kind of scholarships did you come across again?
Yeah.
They didn't call them this, but the reasoning behind it was geographical diversity. Okay. So we went to school back in the days before diversity was actually about diversity and like racial and economic diversity. So just kind of slid under that kind of like requirement for, they just mostly had kids from second ring suburbs going to St. Thomas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It was weird. Super weird.
But I'm hoping people listening in, somebody might pick up and realize there is opportunities out there.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I asked on that.
Totally.
And Olympia, Washington, is that near like the national park?
Mm-hmm.
I was just out there. That's a beautiful place to live at. Like, geez. We went to the rainforest out there.
Oh, it's so nice.
Changed my life.
Yeah.
So if you ever get to go to Washington, you know, it looks kind of rainy and gloomy when you're out there. I don't know. I liked it. I like the rain. I like the gloom. But sorry, getting off track.
No, it's okay. I love backpacking. I was going to say my my very, very worst night of backpacking was in Olympic National Park. And it was just because it was so cold and wet, and it was New Year's, and I would not recommend New Year's backpacking in the whole rainforest. It was so miserable.
Yeah, we went in like November.
Yeah, that's a better time.
Okay. But no, that's dope. So you came to St. Thomas and like, what you go to school for again?
Political science and international relations.
Oh, okay. So you were in it. You were in it from the beginning. And what was it like, you know, going to school in Minnesota and like, you know, coming from, from Washington to here? Like, what were the differences? What did you notice?
Yeah. So I grew up in a really Catholic family.
Okay.
And so I had always considered myself to be like pretty conservative growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like I remember in elementary school, like writing little letters to President Bush being like, save the babies, like that type of Catholic growing out.
Oh, wow.
Because Olympia is like a super duper progressive community and liberal community. And then I moved to Minnesota and I was like, whoa, conservative is really different here. And I am definitely not a conservative person. So that was like a weird culture shock. The winters were terrible. I'd never really been in snow. I knew it was going to be bad, but I truly thought I would not stay here past college, and here I am. You get used to it. I feel like boots and like the right coat really make the difference. And I was like, Ugg boots are winter boots, totally. And then what else was it like? It was like St. Thomas is such a weird place because there's the business school, which like makes it like pretty fiscally conservative and like not politically engaged. And then there's the seminary, which is really conservative. But then there's also this really crunchy program called the Studies of Justice and Peace, or Justice and Peace Studies. So there are also there's a small community of very kind of crunchy social justice focused students. And so after a while, it was pretty easy to find my community. And I would say actually working for Obama in 2008 made a huge difference for me because I just met people who were like-minded and like interested in engaging politically and kind of like being a part of the bigger city and the bigger like Minnesota instead of just focusing on what was inside the walls at college. So it was weird. It was hard. It took me a while.
Do you feel maybe it might just be for me, but I'm wondering if other people in our generation, do you feel Obama was a big pull to get into politics more?
100%, yes.
Yeah. I feel that a lot of people my age, even if you didn't vote for him, I feel like people got more engaged in that. I think that's also when we could first vote too.
It was the very first election.
Yeah. So that got me into politics a lot and me trying to understand the differences. And I knew, you know what I mean? But it was like I was in hardcore when he was running for office because I was like, I've never seen anybody look like him.
Yeah.
And then it got me into learning about all the other like all the other things I didn't know about within the Democratic Party, and for sure. So like that's something that got you kind of going to your road down.
Yeah. And I think I got to meet when I was working for that campaign One of my very, very favorite role models and like friends, her name's Erin Murphy. She's a senator in St. Paul, a state senator.
Okay.
And it was kind of before we'd started forming our relationship, but I will never forget going to like a lobby day at the Capitol and meeting our representative. And she like took a meeting with a bunch of St. Thomas students and just like talked to us as though we were adults and had meaningful opinions. And fast forward, 10 years, I was her finance director when she ran to be the first woman governor. She was not elected, but is still one of my like closest
Did
contacts.
she recognize you from before?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is really, it was sweet. And she was, I will just never forget. She said, I'll always remember you. My sister's name is Maggie. And just like, I love that style of politics. And I think Obama did it well too, of like, he makes people feel like they can be a part of something.
Exactly.
Like your friend, like you can hang out with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like Erin Murphy talks a lot about the politics of joy and like coming from this like abundance mindset of like we can do great things for each other and with each other instead of kind of like building a politics of fear, which I really love because I think, again, this gets back to this idea that our stories are important and our stories are what center us and ground us in this work. But like when we talk about what we can do together, like it's just so much more engaging and exciting. And I think we're just really lucky to have had Obama as our first big political movement.
Question for you.
Yeah.
I've kind of noticed a trend that it's easier to get people wild up on, let's say, more hateful stuff than the joyful stuff. In your political experience, why is that?
I don't know. I guess I don't have a good answer for the question. I think.
Or what have you observed?
Yeah, I think it's easier when you're engaging on kind of like a mass media level to get engaged around issues of fear. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Say that?
That makes sense.
Whereas like when you sit down with people one-on-one, that's when you have like, it's just a lot more work to do the kind of the politics of joy and that abundance mindset.
Honestly, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say, again, coming back to Nick Core, I worked with him on a campaign called Minnesotans United for All Families. It was a campaign to defeat an amendment that was proposed for our Constitution that would have banned gay marriage. And again, totally different campaign than the Obama campaign, but also built on this idea that if we engage people one-on-one and we ask them to think about the gay people in their lives and the people in their lives, and if they weren't allowed to get married, like how would that make you feel? And really lean into that like emotion. And it was a really, really special campaign, and we won. And now gay marriage is legal here, which is really neat.
Yeah. Shout out to you.
But it was fascinating. And I think, like as a woman leader, I try to think of like, how can I be a radical leader? Like, what are the systems that we need to upend in order for like other women to continue to lead? And one of those things is this idea that like, emotions are unprofessional or not productive, right? Like that is capitalism and late stage capitalism telling us that like femme traits are not productive or useful.
Yeah, because I don't mean to cut you off, but
no,
it doesn't matter. It's something when you're aggressive.
Yeah,
it's something when he's a alpha. I hate that word, but alpha. He's an alpha male. He's taking control.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, I have seen that like when someone's what emotion would they associate as like not productive though? Like what would you think as like if that isn't productive? Like what emotion do you think that would be though?
So I think a lot of like Lee asked the question like why is fear more motivating? We don't think of fear as one of these like not productive emotions, right?
That's true. Yeah.
When we like frame it in the like, oh, I'm afraid of people crossing the border and taking our jobs, right? Like that we don't see that fear as like non-productive, but when we see women crying or emoting, we find that to be unproductive, right? Like we tell people like you can't cry at work. And actually like, especially when you're working in politics, like we do this because of our emotional connection. It's actually really important. And that's why we do art, right? Like art and politics, like this is how we process our very real human experiences. And to say like you have to take the humanity out of your experience in order to be productive, like again, that's literally like quantifying our ability to participate in capitalism by stripping us of our own humanity.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so I'm getting like really deep and riled, but like this is kind of a thing that I think about as like a woman leader, like how do we upend these systems? And part of it is just honoring who we are.
Yeah, no, I think you've nailed it, because I was going to say, like, with that, there's got to be a balance in both. Like, I understand people get emotional and people are logical. So I'm like, if you understand you're dealing with somebody who's more emotional, there's a way you can navigate that to get your end goal across to it. Because I don't feel like, I feel like it's a little bit rude telling people like, yeah, you can't be emotional.
Yeah.
But okay, people get emotional. Yeah. Then find your way how to work with that reality that people are emotional, you know?
Exactly. And it's like, how do you work through that and use that experience? Like, does it mean you step away for a second and then come back? Like, there's again, like you said, there's lots of ways to work around it, but to just like not acknowledge it and not allow it, I think actually makes for big problems. And I would say like Donald Trump is a great example of like a small man who probably like wasn't allowed to cry and is now like throwing temper tantrums that have taken over the world.
That's what, like, I guess, I don't, that's why
I guess you're not mature, because I say maturity comes with emotion control. Like if you can actually be self-aware of your emotions, you got emotional maturity.
Yeah.
When you're throwing tantrums and you're not aware when you're angry and you're just like flipping out in rooms.
100%.
Yeah, what's the level? Like, what is, how am I trying to say this? Because like you said, he do temper tantrums and no one bat an eye at that.
Yeah.
But like a woman crying, that's not productive.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. So you think about it a lot. We take a step back and you think about it, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
But also when you break it down, like with just a logical mind, I guess it's like, okay, you're crying now, but that's not solving the problem. So I can see when somebody's like, yeah, stop crying and go solve the problem.
Yes, exactly, totally. And like there is like a balance.
I get
and
that.
I often say I manage a lot of staff. I love having younger staff, but sometimes I wish people would bring just like 10% less of their authentic self to work. You know what I mean? Like not in a like I want to honor you, but also like there is a level of emotionality that is not helpful. And I definitely get like that too. Like I have a terrible temper. Like I am very Irish, and I just get mad sometimes. And I have to just like, one of my staff calls it like, you need to go touch grass right now. Like you need to step outside, go for a walk around the block and just like cool it. And so like, again, there are ways to deal with it, but like to just say it's not real would probably not be super helpful either.
Yeah, and I think it's being a little disingenuous.
Yeah.
I mean, to act like we don't have emotions and it doesn't make sense.
The world has been operating off emotions and logic. And unfortunately it's been operating more off emotions, you know.
That's right.
I'm not saying the bad thing, but I do think I also agree with what you guys are saying. Like, if you have to control the emotions sometimes, and like you're saying, like in different doors, like okay, here you can be your full self, but here maybe 80%, over there maybe 50%. Like you have to whatever environment you're in, you can't always be your full self. But also, I agree, like you shouldn't be shunned if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you have a bad day, like we all have bad days. So,
just like you can be direct with certain people, but there's some people who, to get that same message across, you can't be direct because they won't receive it that way. So you might need to take a little step back to still get that point across.
Totally. Yes.
Yeah, I think about like in sports, like a certain player, if you're a coach, you can talk to them a certain way, but the other guy, you can't talk to him that same way.
Yeah.
It just depends on the person. I think you're right. We shouldn't use that on women. We're like, well, you're emotional. Well,
it's like, we're emotional creatures.
That's easy to be emotional.
It's all good.
It's okay. It's fine, but let's not like, you know what I mean?
And also at the same time, it's like biologically speaking, it's like, okay, you will understand women are emotional and you can't change that reality. So learn how to deal with it.
Right.
Yeah. But it's simply and bluntly, you know.
Why change it?
It's like, that's just the reality of it. It's there. You got emotions too. So
and we socialize women to be emotional, right? Like it's like a little bit like chicken and egg.
Yeah. So why do we cultivate that? Then we get mad at what we like. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Almost like we hate women as a society. I don't know. I just have this theory.
That might be going a little bit far because, like, no, we appreciate women.
Yes.
I think that there's some people on the side that we don't agree with who want women to be a certain way because they've been told what women are supposed to be, other than like this experience in women.
And let's be honest, there's some
I mean-
people who are just really angry out there for whatever past experiences they had, and somehow
That's what it is. That's what I'm saying.
platform.
Like, other than you being mad, how about you hang out with women and get like, other than being mad about it,
Yeah.
like go see what they go through every day, and then
Yeah.
maybe you get some perspective. That's just my opinion.
I agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
Because as much as people are like, oh, this side doesn't understand us, it's like, well, you're not
And on
understanding.
the flip
Yeah.
side, if you really hate men, you may not want to be around all the men, but be around some men you think are some good guys.
Yeah.
See how they move. Then you
They
can
do exist.
Yeah, then
Like,
you
you
have
got
to.
brothers. I see you hanging out with your brothers all day. Like,
Right.
they're not trash.
Right.
Turns
So
out people are people.
Yeah.
Some are good and some are bad.
So, exactly. So I don't prejudge anybody. But yeah, we gotta get back on track. We will get off track because I wanna. So, what was? I guess the first step was you working with these organizations, right? What was the next step to get you so focused into like the I guess pro-choice side? Because like
Yeah.
you're very liberal, and I'm sure you already were very pro-choice. But,
Yeah.
like, what got you to be like, all right, I'm gonna put my foot in this? You know, like,
Yeah.
put my foot on their neck about this shit.
That's a really good question. I think it is just like family history, and it is something that has been important to me since I realized I was pro-choice. And I remember I was like sitting in a sophomore year in high school physics class, and someone asked me like, why are you, pro-life? And I was like, because God said so, or like something like that. And they're like, well, what about the women who are like already having abortions and like they get hurt? And I was like, oh, I like truly have never thought about it that way. I think I'm pro-choice. And like for me, it was like a really easy switch to be like, oh, I truly just had to have a conversation to expand my own opinion. And really since then, it has just been that and like the environment. And I think environmental justice and reproductive justice kind of go hand in hand and can't really be decoupled. But it's just always been something that really resonates for me because of that closeness to my grandma.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
like,
wish I had a better answer, but I'm like, I don't know. It just and then I guess like how my career path, how I got into it.
yeah.
I worked for this organization called Women Winning. So my first career was in humanitarian aid. I realized I was doing that all because of like a feeling of white saviorism. And I was like, maybe this isn't appropriate. We should not do this anymore. And like humanitarian aid is like it's just an interesting space to work in. And it ended up not being the right fit for me.
Did you do it here in the States? Okay.
Yeah. I worked for an organization right out of college called Books for Africa.
Okay.
And so it's a wonderful organization, but like I think I felt disingenuous being there from the space of like I felt I was there because of Catholic guilt, right? Of like I have to like give to other people and when you are giving and working to instead of giving and working with, like that's a really, really different approach. And I feel like a lot of white-led organizations
NGOs in general, that has been the biggest problem even when interviewing other people about like, oh, there's like the UN organizations and stuff. Because UN, that's what they actually try. It's like working with.
Yes.
Rather than what you just described there.
Yeah. And so I kind of did some self-examination and found this organization called Women Winning and started working there. They needed someone with like both accounting and graphic design skills, which I had. And those are really weird skills to have together. And so I started working there, and they worked to, and they are still around, and they work to recruit and train pro-choice women to run for office at every level. So like park board and board of like soil boards or like whatever we have here. And like school boards to like, we worked for Hillary Clinton and raised a boatload of money for her.
I picture of that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it was pretty cool. That was a pretty neat moment. And so I worked there for 4-ish years. And I think that really kind of solidified for me the importance of like, it's not just like the decisions that we make, right? Like there's so much work that we can do at the Capitol, and I'm a lobbyist and I work in policy now. But like if you don't have the right people to make the decisions, you can't get the work done. So like having pro-choice women in office is extremely important because they just naturally think about reproductive rights in a different way than someone who can't get pregnant does. And that's just, I think, like having representation of different lifestyles and different like abilities and bodies and gender and race, like it makes a difference because people can use that lived experience to define policies that we pursue. So that's my career space.
That's dope. So pro-choice Minnesota.
Yeah.
It's its own entity. It's not, because there is a national thing. So I guess, were you part of the national movement?
Yeah.
And then what happened, I guess, to break it off, to make it your own thing? I guess we'll start off like, how'd you get into that, and then why'd you break it off?
Yeah, of course. So when I started at Pro-Choice Minnesota, we were NARAL, Pro-Choice Minnesota.
Say that again?
NARAL. So it's NARAL.
Okay.
The National Abortion Rights Action League.
Okay.
Is what it stands for. But just, it's been NARAL for a few years. And so we'd been a part of NARAL since like the 90s, I want to say.
Okay.
And there were, around Obama era, there was like 25 different state level NARALs and a national NARAL.
Okay.
And when I started, there were 15. And so we kind of, different states would either shut down or leave and go off and be on their own, but there were still quite a few of us left. And in, I think it was 2020 or 2021, it must have been 2021, it came to light that the national organization wrote a strategic plan that would have forced all of the state organizations to shutter or kind of roll into that work and do federal work. And at the time, it was like just after Whole Women's Health versus Hellerstedt and right before the Dobbs v. Jackson case was coming out. So we knew that, do you need me to change things? Yeah.
I'm getting static in mine.
You getting static on your, hang on. What's going on now on your side? Can you hear it?
Yeah, I can hear it. Oh, went away. We still recording?
Yeah.
All right, we're good. Oh, now I'm muted. I can't hear myself. Okay, we're good. All right. We'll edit that out.
Okay.
We'll be fine. Yeah. No, we're not edit that out.
No,
Sorry.
it's not
that's okay.
Go ahead.
I'll just like pick a spot and re-go. So just do whatever you need to. So the national organization wrote a strategic plan that would have shuttered the statewide organizations. We knew at the time, because looking at the Supreme Court docket, that sometime very soon there would likely be an overturn of Roe versus Wade. And when Roe versus Wade was overturned, which it was,
Yeah.
the decisions went back to the state level to decide whether or not abortion would be legal in a state. And so my analysis of the moment and the analysis of the other 11 executive directors of similar organizations that were a part of NARAL decided that we could do more effective work as standalone organizations focused on the state than as a part of a group doing work at the federal level. And so I agree with that still, right? Like in Minnesota this last year, we passed the PRO Act, which put into law, it codified the right to an abortion in the state. It was the first law passed this legislative session. We passed a thing called the Reproductive Freedom Defense Act, which provides legal protections for providers and doctors and nurses providing abortions to people coming here from out of state. Like we are, for the first time in like more than a decade, we're increasing reimbursement rates for Medicaid for abortions.
Wow.
So like we're doing a lot of things. We're also increasing some funding for traveling for abortion, so covering people's lodging and transportation costs if they're coming from greater Minnesota. And so we know that we left for the right reason because of all the amazing work that we can do at the state level, whereas things have just stalled at the federal level.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break. Just kind of just look, check out the cameras, and we'll be right back at it. Get back on that.
Want to keep going, or
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So I think the benefit of being a part of a national network was that it was really easy to get funding. And we had like a reliable funder in our national organization. But it also came with things like our bylaws for our board were all defined by national, and like our member definition of like who actually gets to be a voting member of Pro-Choice Minnesota. So there are a lot of benefits. Like we get to be our own organization. We get to define our own endorsement process. We get to build out, legislative scorecards and accountability programs. And we just have a lot more flexibility. But then the challenges, of course, are we have a lot of flexibility. And so somebody has to make decisions, which is usually me, which I love and hate, right? Like it's awesome to be able to have that authority and to have people behind you and have the support, but it's also really, really scary to be like, oh yeah, people's like livings are dependent upon like my ability to perform.
True. Yeah, that is scary.
Yeah.
That's terrifying, actually.
Yeah, it's a hard job. I like it, but it's a hard job.
So you mentioned like you work with politicians, you're lobbyists.
Yeah.
What is that like? And who have you met? And like who's like man, like you were just like, oh my God, I don't know what to say. Like who are some big people you met throughout your time doing this amazing work that you're doing?
Yeah. So we mentioned that I got to meet Hillary Clinton once, and it was like a very brief meeting, but I truly like it felt like I had just done some sort of like drug. Like I was just like, oh my God, like I got to touch her and like hug her, and like she knew my name, and I know she didn't know. Somebody was like, this is Maggie, and she's like, hello Maggie, and I'm like, oh my God. So like that was really cool. Who else do I get starstruck? I get starstruck for weird people. Like I feel like Minnesota's super weird, and I've heard this from national groups that we've worked with, especially I've worked a lot with Emily's List. They do a lot of work with women winning and with candidates that I've worked for. But every person I've worked with from national is like, the women in Minnesota love each other so much.
That's
like
great.
It's really, really nice. Like we're always just like, she's the best. Here's all the things. Here's why she's badass. And it's just like a really unique environment. So I feel like I get kind of fangirly around like most women that I meet. Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan is kind of one of those people.
Yeah.
Anytime I'm around her, I'm just like, oh my God, she's so cool. Today I got to be around Cecile Richards, who I've met before. She was I call her like abortion Barbie. Because she's just like tiny and gorgeous, but she was the head of the National Planned Parenthood for like forever, I want to say, and then is just like this huge name in like reproductive rights politics. And so I just like I couldn't talk to her, and she was like, "Thanks for being here. It was so good to see you again." And I was like, "I guarantee you do not actually remember me, but I feel so special right now. I can't believe I got to like stand next to you at a press conference."
That's great.
Yeah.
So So you say you're a lobbyist, or
Yeah.
like, what does that mean? For people who don't know what a lobbyist is, like,
Yeah.
what is that every day? Like, what does that work look like?
Yeah. So previously I was our only lobbyist, and now we have two. So I have a political director. So I'm I'm not as in the game as I was at one time, which is nice because it lets me do the other 4 jobs that I have instead of just that one. So sorry. But so your job as a lobbyist is to talk to elected officials and make sure that policy reflects our interests as an organization. So our interest is expanding and protecting reproductive rights. And so the day-to-day is you're up at the Capitol and you're talking to folks who work at the Capitol, be they the staff who work for elected officials, folks who implement policy like people at Department of Health or Health and Human Services or Education, or talking to elected officials themselves to say, here's something that we want to see happen in policy. Like, how do we work together to get that done?
Okay.
Does that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what I thought it was.
Yeah.
Now, is it legally okay in those discussions to be like, hey, we'll make sure we fund you this much if you make this?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's a lot of that, like, wink, wink, nod, nod happening. But you can't do fundraising or basically like any of those campaign finance conversations at the Capitol. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And Minnesota has really strict campaign finance laws, like some of the strictest in the state. Because we try to kind of separate the like, we'll scratch your back, you scratch mine feeling.
Nice.
Like,
But there's like,
happen.
yeah, that's why I asked like if it's legal, and I'm glad you made that clear because I understand like people will always find the loopholes in the law to try. So as you say, there's always nudges.
Yes. And we are an organization. We do endorse candidates. So we, give them our stamp of approval and say this is a pro-choice champion, and then fund their campaigns as well. But those tend to be different times of year, different cycles, et cetera.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like something like, pro-choice is something that, like, I'll scratch your back. Like, you know what I mean? It's a very, either you, like, are for it or you're not for it.
Yeah. There's
It's
only
like-
so much money you can give too, right? Like
Right.
people don't really like funding abortion.
No.
So we only
Yeah.
have so many resources. It's not like we're not like a Koch brothers situation. I wish we were. I wish I had that kind of money. But no, our budgets are like a couple $1,000 instead of like hundreds of thousands.
But
of
I'm
dollars.
glad you broke this down with also you asked that question with the lobbyists, because I'm not gonna lie, my perception of lobbyists, as much as I still understand politics and stuff, I'm still like, no, there's other people who are going in there bribing.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Liberal
why I
front.
wanted to,
Yeah.
Because people don't know what a lobbyist is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they do. There's a bunch of different lobbyist situations.
Yeah. I would say that's not true of all lobbyists, right? But I think like there's when you run a nonprofit and like lobby for a nonprofit, it's just like we have less to give.
Yeah.
And usually with abortion, you're like asking people to stick their necks out a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's not real like you're really just asking for favors all the time.
Yeah.
Very
Yes.
cut and dry
Yeah.
topic. So
Yeah.
it's like, and you're talking about your nonprofit. I've done nonprofit. I've worked in a lot of nonprofits.
Yeah.
I'm a social worker. So who helps you? Who backs you? Like,
Yeah.
who are people like,
Yeah, we're
out
like
there backing you?
85% individual gifts.
Wow.
Yeah, we've
Holy cow.
yeah. And when I started, there were only 11 people who had ever given more than $1,000 at a time, which is bonkers. We've grown that. Like I come from a fundraising background. Like that's kind of like what I'm good at. And so, I think you and I have talked about, I've grown my team more than doubled the size of our staff, like our permanent staff. So I said earlier, I'm our first single, like not married executive director. And the reason I think that's important is prior to my employment, every executive director had healthcare and benefits from a partner. So because they didn't need it, didn't provide it for their staff. So I didn't have healthcare via a partner.
So you had to figure it
So
out.
I figured it out,
Yeah.
right? And like that's again, this is like our lived experiences define like what we prioritize.
Right.
And it shouldn't have taken somebody who didn't have healthcare
Right.
to like get healthcare for our staff. But it's expensive and it's important, but we're a healthcare advocacy organization. Like, of course our staff should have free healthcare.
I don't think we talk about that. Like the people trying their best to get these, get these laws in and help people in the grand scheme, they're not getting a lot of help. Like the people, like you know what I mean, like who run these nonprofits, it's because they just don't know. It's not like they're not trying to help,
Yeah.
right? Obviously they're in it to help, but like they don't think about, oh, I should get health care for my staff. Like
Yeah.
it's just so things get dropped off on the wayside. But it's great. That's great because, like you said, if you didn't have that experience, we wouldn't have, they wouldn't have any health care.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
So like, how tough is it being like an entrepreneur? Because that's what you are. Like,
Yeah.
how stressful is that? Do you enjoy it? Like, what is your opinion on all of that?
It is so interesting. Do I enjoy it? Some days yes and some days no.
Okay.
Some days are really good. I think like any entrepreneur, like there are days where I end my day and I'm like, wow, I did such cool stuff today and I feel really good. And there are other days where I'm like, I have not accomplished a thing in 2 weeks. And I think it's time for me to
Yeah,
throw
I
in the
feel that.
towel.
Well, the difference is that your entrepreneurship isn't like I'm out here trying to make. You're not trying to make money. You're out here
Yeah.
trying to like change the world. So it's like a different type of mentality when you wake up every day.
Yeah. And I will say, I have never been as emotionally invested in a job as I am in this job, which is like exhausting. So like every time I fail, it's like that extra, like, not only did I fail, but like I failed on the thing that I care the most about. And that's like just an extra pressure. And like, again, this comes back to like our emotions are important.
Right.
It's like there are going to be days where like I just can't make progress because I'm feeling too much for myself. So like when Roe fell, that was a day like that where we were all just like, I can't,
Right.
I can't do anything. I'm just sad and I'm just mad.
And we have to, like you were telling me before, we have to give room to that more.
Yeah.
We have to let people feel their emotions and let them be in that. But also on the flip side, you also somebody like, hey man, we gotta get after it.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
day the world keeps turning.
Yeah.
And so I agree with that. That was rough. That was a rough day.
Especially-
Someone who can't give birth. You know what I mean? Like I thought that was good. To me, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
What was your thought process
when it happened, and then I guess the midpoint, and then to now. Oh, maybe you might be at the midpoint.
Yeah.
That's still
So-
the midpoint.
That's a great question. My thought process that day, I mean, we knew likely when the decision would come, so it helped. And it helped that like the leak had come. The leak day was really hard.
Yep, I saw that.
And I just remember sitting on my couch. Thank you so much. And like getting a Twitter alert that was like, this leaked from the Supreme Court, and calling one of my staff and being like, do you think this is like gonna be important? Like, should I call a staff meeting? It's 9 p.m. And she's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure this is important. They're gonna overturn Roe. And I was like, oh shit.
Shit is right. Like,
Yeah, it was just like one of those nights where I try not to call my staff really late at night because that's kind of rude. And also please, they need to live their lives as well. But it was just one of those days where truly it was shocking, even though we knew it was going to happen. And then the day Roe actually was overturned, it was so busy for, I would say, from like 7 a.m. till probably 3 p.m. I was just on the phone, either with partners or board chairs or clinics, like figuring out like what happens. Is abortion still legal in Minnesota? Like what happened? And then like doing media interviews and doing rallies. And then I just remember sitting down after like 8 hours of talking to the media and just like crying. And I just didn't know that I was going to feel that level of sad, because for years I'd been like, we know this is going to happen. But you're never, even if you're ready for something, you're never quite like
until it
prepared,
actually happens. And
Yeah.
Yep.
So that first day was really hard. After it, for like a couple weeks, it was just really challenging to figure out what to do, like because it was an election year, which was kind of nice. So we were like, this is a moment, right? Like this is a moment where we can get people to turn out. Like now's the time to do the work and make sure like that people are connecting. Roe's gone, abortion could be illegal, and like I get the opportunity to vote for people and like make sure it stays safe here in Minnesota. And so we ended up getting some like really awesome investments in our programming, and we got to fund organizing work. So folks who were doing like one-on-one conversations with Minnesotans about why politics is important to protect abortion. And so those like next 6 months were just work, just a lot of work. And this legislative session has just been like a lot of work, but we've gotten pretty much everything we wanted, to the point that this is where we're at the midpoint. I truly like don't know what to ask for next. Like there's a lot more work to do to protect and like expand abortion rights, but I'm gonna have to spend the summer like actually developing that policy and thinking through like what are other states doing and like what could we do differently and what's still on the books, because I didn't think we'd get so much done. I truly never believed that we could get so much good stuff in this session.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Now, do you think it's possible for them to do like a national ban?
Yeah.
Like, you think it is very...
And I think this mifepristone case that's coming out of Texas will be really, really interesting. And are you too familiar with this case? Do you want me to?
But let's explain to the people listening.
Yeah, I want to know, because I actually had that was like literally my next question.
Okay,
about
perfect.
Other stuff, so
You asked your questions in like the perfect order. It's such the natural flow. You're so good at this.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So this mifepristone case, there is a group out of Texas. I don't think they're actually based in Texas, but they brought the case in Texas because that's where the most Trump-appointed judges are. So that's why they chose Texas. They have the most likelihood to be successful and have a judge side with them. And they are challenging the FDA approval of one of the medications that's used in abortions when you have a medication abortion.
Yep.
There are two pills, mifepristone and misoprostol, or misoprostol. I've heard it pronounced a number of different ways. And you take these two pills, and that causes an induced miscarriage, or an induced abortion. And more than 60% of abortions in the United States are medication abortions. They're extremely safe. More than 5 million women or people who can get pregnant have ended their pregnancies.
No one talks about that stuff, though.
What?
Like, no one knows that, though.
Yeah. And it's like I wouldn't say it's necessarily like a pleasant experience, right? Like you're inducing a miscarriage, but it's really safe. There are fewer medical complications than like people getting their wisdom teeth out every year. It's like a really, really safe thing. And so, it's been legal and used to end pregnancies in the United States for more than 20 years at this point. It was approved in, I believe, 2001. And so this group of doctors is saying that the FDA approval was rushed and that it needs to be revisited because they don't think it's safe enough, even though it's been used for 20 years safely.
Right.
So that's the case.
But
I know, right? You're just like, this is silly.
Yeah.
This is totally ridiculous.
But I'm also thinking of like, how are you going to stand to prove that when you have 20 years of data to go off?
Well, that's the thing. It's like, it's not about the fact, it's about the politics. It's not about the safety of the patient.
It's ridiculous. I'm just like, I mean, once again, the science and the math will tell you if you look at the data for the last 20 years. Yeah. There's your peer review, you know.
Exactly. You're like, this is safe.
Well, this is the same state. You can definitely correct me or interject. That wants to have the bill have a little sticky little thing in there where they want anybody who had an abortion must list like their other medical like things. So like, let's say you had an abortion and then say you had a blood clot from something else, not from the abortion. You have to list that as maybe it was because of the abortion.
Yeah.
Like what that it literally like you said, it's not about like the facts or like what we already know about abortion. It's about the politics of like of the situation.
Yeah.
It's creating a narrative that isn't even there.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I think so we know that folks who are anti-abortion are also anti-racial justice. They are anti-public school. They are anti-trans, right? Like all of these things are together. And like there are quite a few people who protest at our clinics who were at the January 6th insurgents and like takeover of the Capitol, right? Like these things are all put together and they're all kind of swirling in this like cesspool of misinformation and disinformation around like the safety of our communities and our bodies. And it's about politics and control rather than safety. And so this case may or may not, we don't know what's going to happen. There's a concurrent case in Washington that says the FDA can't make any rulings that changes availability of mifepristone on the market. So both of these cases have been decided and they have opposite, oops, I hit my mic. They have opposite decisions. So basically the FDA can't do anything right now because they're like, well, Washington says we can't change anything and Texas says we have to change it. So like, what do we do? So we know this case will go to the Supreme Court is basically what will happen. One of these two cases will like create precedents. And like, that's scary because we know what the Supreme Court wants to do.
Yeah.
And so that brings us full circle back to like, yes, it is very possible for there to be a national ban.
Okay. I just hope it doesn't come to it. 'Cause I'm just like, you can't, I might get some heat for this, but I'm like, you can't be giving China and Taliban crap for what the fuck they're doing when you're literally perpetuating the same thing here. You're just in United States of America.
Someone said that America is a third world country with a Gucci belt. and I'm just like, that's true. Like we let people get shot up and
seriously,
we arrest people for crimes that don't hurt anybody for a long time, and the other side of that, rapists, you get 2 years. Like it doesn't.
What the hell?
It just. I'm not into that.
Yeah.
Or you're gonna go to another country and be like, yeah, you need to get this women's rights, and then you're gonna come over here, take this women's rights away.
Yeah, totally.
We're ass backwards, but thinking we're the greatest thing ever. And it drove me.
Or like the best one, like when you mentioned about like the cross border stuff, like people coming here and being able to be persecuted by their state. Like that still blows and frustrates me because I'm like, you're literally doing what the Communist Party of China does to people, and even what they're trying to like chase people outside of their country. And like in the news, we've been there busting like the little police stations that China has established here in America, like secret police, try and like persecute.
Yeah, I think it's weird. I think that's weird when people talk about China and I'm not maybe saying the Uruguay and all that. And it's like, well, we do that.
We're doing that here. Like you're trying to make that a thing of where you're chasing people who are going out of your state. Like, oh, if you move out of this state, we can still persecute you for getting an abortion. Like,
I don't want to get into it.
It's crazy.
There's people who like just ran for politics in a state who talk nonsense. I'm just like, dog. What are you talking about? I'm not getting into that right now.
Yeah,
but like, we focus on that part of what China is doing. We're not focused on what we do here.
Yeah.
And you say, like, whatever. Anyways, so I'm not getting that too much because I will go out of the tangent.
It didn't get off topic. It was still correlating on that. It's just a little bit weird on that.
It's just a conversation. Just a light conversation about, international politics.
For me, I was raised by like by people who you stand on what you say and you rock with that and you don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you know what you talk about. And I have a hard time with people who run for office sometimes. Will bring up these abstract conversations and then do what we got going on here.
Yeah.
But so a question I guess I want to ask is what can men or people who can't give birth, what can they do to support y'all in this movement?
Yeah. I mean, always give money. That's always helpful. As a fundraiser, I have to ask.
Yeah, right.
But I think I have this like very sweet example of some men and who are doing some really, really good work for us. So at my organization, we have a field and a phone canvas. So folks who go door to door and call people every day and talk about abortion. We have, almost 20,000 conversations every year about abortion with people one-on-one, doing that work of like actually changing minds and supporting the important work that we do. And right now, the folks who go door to door are almost all men. And they work hourly, and it's like very sweet. Like they are out knocking doors, having conversations, and they support a professional staff of mostly women and queer people. And like I just think that's a really sweet and wonderful example of men doing the work and not asking for a parade. And like not asking for like those leadership positions, like yeah,
Right.
like you don't get a
Like,
parade, you're doing the work.
I want my high for yeah. Most men who do stuff like that think they should be celebrated.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
No, if it's right, just do it.
So I would say
Agree.
doing the work, funding the work, having those conversations, especially like amongst groups of people who can't get pregnant, like talking to each other about like why it's important to you, because sometimes a person who can get pregnant, a woman, isn't going to be the right ambassador for that conversation. Because they'll be, as we were talking about earlier, seen as overly emotional or too connected to the issue. And like, of course, you're connected to the issue, you can get pregnant. Right?
That's like kind of black person. Whatever. Anyways.
Yeah. So I would say like those are the things to do. But giving financially is always a really good option. Every dollar counts.
Right.
We have gifts from like $1 up to like $10,000-$15,000, and every single one funds what we do. And I'll just like put in my plug. You can donate at prochoiceminnesota.org.
Nice.
All spelled out.
She's messing up my question.
I know. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Yes.
But wait, say that again.
It's prochoiceminnesota.org.
And
Definitely
we'll
have
get
it
that.
down.
And what, you got any events coming up or things that people should think about who want to support you?
Yeah. So our biggest fundraiser of the year is coming up. Tickets go on sale this week. And it is June 15th. It's an annual gala we call The Power of Choice. And our speaker is Dr. Tiffany Green. She's a
Can I take a quick break? Or I can run out. You keep talking. I'll be right back. I'll let somebody in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess you do have to let somebody in. So we'll just keep it rolling. We'll keep talking here. Little break. This is going to be a little intermission.
Yeah.
We're going to go on an actual etiquette talk real quick.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
But remember your last point on there because you're
Yes.
talking about the event.
Yes.
That's coming up.
Do you want to start on etiquette?
Yeah,
What do
earlier
you
we
think about it?
mentioned about etiquette, and I was just like, yeah, people, this generation doesn't have etiquette, but it's important to know because you might get out of the country and somebody might be like, yo, you rude piece of shit.
Yeah. Like you're very rude.
Yeah. But I was interested on your counter on it. I want to hear more because you said like you think it's a problem
Yeah.
to having etiquette.
I think etiquette canon, anything where we say like the old way is the right way,
Okay.
is used to like gatekeep, right? So like it's based in like misogyny and it's based in white supremacy because it basically says like if you don't behave and haven't been taught to behave, then you are like not worthy of respect. And so I think it's a double-edged sword because I also think that people should not be rude, right?
Yeah, you should.
I'm like you should not be rude, and it's like nice to have etiquette, and I think to require people to have etiquette is based in problematic systems.
Okay, in a way, but like I feel like in a way for us to get along in society,
Yeah.
we still need a common ground of etiquette to at least showing respect in a situation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think respect is important. And I think understanding the way other people want to be respected is super duper important. And I think that can come from conversations as much as like known known habits and behaviors, right? Because it also like varies across cultures, like etiquette does. Like in America, we love hugging, and in other places, it's totally inappropriate to hug a stranger. And so I think there are. I think it's a double-edged sword in that, like, I think thinking about it as like there's one set of manners that we should use versus like we should respect people and treat them the way they would like to be treated.
Yeah. Would you agree on that? Because like also like you mentioned earlier, like it ties a lot to like the conservative. What I understood of that is like more like people sticking with the traditional way of doing things.
Yeah.
But like, I sound a little bit contradictory right now, but I also understand that like, I understand traditions, but we're humans and we're evolving and we're changing. And like when you think of our time here on Earth, it's just a little speck of time. So it'd be kind of dumb to expect traditions to be the main norm for the rest of human existence. It's like we're always going to change, and what was rude yesterday might actually be polite in the future. You know?
Totally. Like I think a lot about like cell phones, right? Like I'm sure what do you do professionally?
I mean, I'm like professionally, I'm in business to business sales.
Okay.
That's the best way I could put it. Consultancy and business to business sales.
Yeah. So I would assume early in your career, you were told, don't be on your cell phone doing work. Yeah?
Yeah.
And but now it's like my cell phone is my work.
Yep. Or like, don't text a client. Now it's like, no, you want to text a client because that's the best way to communicate.
Yes. So I would say like cell phone technology, social media, like those are things where we can see these like little tiny microcosms of like etiquette and manners. Like it's so normal to have your phone out during dinner.
Right. Which is versus like when cell phones came out, it was rude to have your phone at the table.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But it's also still really rude to like take a call at the dinner table.
It is. See, and that's where etiquette, as you say, the double-edged sword. And then, it comes back to again with etiquette. Like you do need to know what to do at a dinner table. I guess it's time and place on knowing how to execute your etiquette-ness.
Yeah, exactly.
I would like to go more into that, but too bad Kobe is back, so we're gonna get back on track.
Sorry, I think we're probably going longer than they came in like, oh, I gotta go. Anyways, we're gonna keep it rolling.
Okay.
So
I'm gonna need a little snippet of that little talk over there. That's gonna be my little promo for us here.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Events. We talked about how to donate, get you some money. So what do you do for fun? What do you do to like your job is stressful?
This is the hardest question. I have a dog who I'm obsessed with. Her name's Carla. She's a German Shepherd. She's more human than dog. She's just,
they're family, dude. They're the family. They're part of us.
Yeah, and she's like 96 pounds of just like dinosaur energy because she's still kind of a puppy. And she's terrifying, but like just so sweet. Terrifying, like she has a big ass like cop bark. But she got beat up by like a little Shih Tzu at daycare. Like got bit like 3 times. Just cried. I was like, oh girl, you're like 8 times the size of that dog. I spent a lot of time with her. We got a paddleboard. So I'm pretty excited to teach her how to paddleboard this summer.
Nice.
Yeah. I camp a lot. I love backpacking. I am trying to go to every single national park in my life. I try to do one a year. I missed last year. And I don't have a plan yet for this year. But
how many have you been to so far?
Like 30?
Oh shit.
Yeah. There's only like 60. So it's like
only 60 and she's halfway through. God, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. And it's like fun, right? Okay. Like, Olympic National Park is gorgeous. And we grew up going there.
It changed my life.
Yeah.
You gotta go to any national park.
Yeah.
Go check it out.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. I went to Grand Tetons 2 summers ago with my little brother. And we went backpacking and we met Gabby Pieto's husband, like right after he killed her. Just like on the trail.
Wait, no. Hold up.
Whoa.
Hold up.
It was crazy. Like, didn't know who he was.
Wait, I think we lost the camera.
Oh.
You think so? Oh, yeah.
Well, we have gone over now, but it's fine. Just keep talking.
Yeah. So we just like, we were like walking and we get up to like the kind of the top of this hill and we're talking to another hiker because we weren't quite to our campsite yet. We were like, we could probably do the last third. And she's like, nah, like I wouldn't recommend doing that portion of the trail right now. Like it took me 4 hours to get down it and you guys got to go up. It's going to, you will not make it up to the top like by nighttime. And it is really windy up there and you're not going to want to set up your camp at night. So we we were going to turn around, but we were like taking a rest. And this guy comes up and he looks like very shocky, right? Like, when you can tell somebody's like either like very strung out or like really went through something like very hard. And he has like a teeny tiny like camelback backpack, like no gear, no food. And he's just like walking around by himself. And he's like, yeah, I was going to try to go up to paint a brush or whatever it is tonight. And we're like, that's a terrible idea. Like, you should not do that by yourself.
Oh,
and he's
shit.
like, oh, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. So he goes, and the next day, we see little groups of rangers walking around. And I bet we saw 40 or 50 rangers. And I have never seen multiple rangers on a backpacking trail. And they were just kind of like out in groups, like walking. And it's because it was Gabby Pieto's husband.
Wow.
So it was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
They caught him, right? They
Yeah. I think he committed suicide like shortly before he was caught. Yeah.
Wow. Well, talk about an interesting situation to end up in. Like, what the?
Yeah. Especially because like we didn't know it for like a month. And then
it's just like, okay, we could have done something if we would have known.
Yeah. And our mother was like, I just don't know about all this backpacking. What if there are like strange or dangerous people out there? And we're like, oh, Mom, we'll be fine. There aren't even bears.
Yeah, sure enough, you're running into somebody who's making a national news.
Yes.
Like, what the?
Yeah. So it was very silly. But no, backpacking is probably my favorite spare time. Otherwise, some people think this is funny. I love reading romance novels. Like, love. I don't read a lot of nonfiction because my job is really hard. I just read like fluffy books. And yeah, that's about what I do for fun.
I'm glad I asked because like I think people need an outlet. So like read whatever you want to read.
Yeah.
Because you have a stressful job and yeah, that's great. Like,
do what makes you happy, just as long as you're not stabbing, robbing, killing,
Right.
whatever the fuck you want.
I think in America we get big on like, oh, you gotta work. If you don't work, you gotta keep working. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, no, you need to have some time to go backpacking, hang out with your dog. This is a great episode.
Yeah.
I don't know if we hit all me running around and everybody running around, but it's great. I had a good time. I learned a lot. Keep doing what you're doing. You told me how to support, so I'll definitely support.
Absolutely.
And yeah, this is great. It's bringing content to culture. And I want to end it. Look, this isn't about like. I think pro-choice gets kind of like confused. I feel like people feel like if you're pro-choice, you're all about abortion. It's like no, it's just they deserve the choice. Like they deserve to have the decision for their body.
Yeah.
And like we deserve to have a decision about our lives. Yeah. So like, it's not that people are like gung ho about that. It's just like people just have a decision they need to make. It's a hard decision, and you shouldn't be part of it.
Yeah.
So.
Do you think okay, before we wrap it up on this, because like I totally agree with pro-choice. I'm just like, dude, this should be up to the individual woman to decide whether you want to keep this kid or not. Here's the one thing I got a question. With pro-choice, do you guys agree with also like if the female can be pro-choice on it, like the male can also be pro-choice on being like, I don't want the kid and I don't want to support the kid and I can sign my rights away?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know either, and I think it really
like the same
depends on the context of the relationship.
Okay, because here's not even regardless of context, because it's like if it is a choice of the female to decide whether they want to keep the kid or not, would it also be okay for the male to also have that pro-choice of being like, if she wants to keep the kid, she wants to, but me as a man, I want to sign my rights away and not be ever involved with that kid's life ever.
Yeah.
Here's my thing. You can
correct
me if I'm wrong. I think there should be something to it. I'm not sure if you should sign, like, be able to say, I don't want to deal with it. I don't know. Maybe
because the man can't abort the child,
And that's true. And it is up to a woman to have a child. I understand that. But he made the decision to, going raw. But also, it's like, I do see the point of like, well, I said I didn't want that kid. And there's ways to not have the child. And if you bring it to term, there should be some concept. It shouldn't be on me to have to pay for everything because you decide to have a baby. I get that point of it too. Because that's the man's choice. End of the day. So I don't know what you think about that. But I also feel like, I don't know. you gotta pick your partner correctly on both sides.
Yeah.
Like,
I
both
think
sides.
so. My real opinion is, what if we lived in a world where we just took care of children and families, and like we had free education and childcare, and we had free healthcare, and so having
Maybe if you want.
yeah. Like what if we lived in a world where like that actually didn't matter, and that like people could choose to raise a child together, or you truly had the freedom to make that decision without that economic pressure of needing a second parent to care for the child. And so like when I think about that question, I actually think of a very different answer than like the relationship, because I think, you know, some people have kids and babies with someone they've met once and choose to do that. And some people choose to not carry to term a pregnancy with someone that they've been with for decades. And both are okay, right? There's not good or bad abortions. They're just abortions that people decide to have.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. And so I think the context of the relationship is important. I think that's a choice that like has to be made by the two people together. And I hope that people can do that. But I think the bigger issue that I think of is like, we shouldn't have to. Like, we shouldn't have to have that conversation, because we should just take care of people. And we should just have good social services to support people so that
We should have
Now I understand what you meant now with the context of the relationship. Okay, let's put it simply and re-ask the same question.
Yeah.
It's a one-night stand. Dude wasn't expecting to get the chick pregnant. And this happens, and the chick ends up deciding, like, no, I want to keep the kid. And the dude is like, I don't want shit to do with the kid. They don't know each other. It was just a one-night stand. Would that be okay if a dude had the right to be able to do that legally? Be like, okay, I'm going to take myself to the courthouse and sign my rights away because I'm avoiding myself.
Yeah, I mean, it is an option now.
Is it?
Yeah, that's legal here. Yeah. My ex got a woman pregnant the second time he slept with her when he was deployed, and that's why he's an ex. And had to have a lot of those conversations. That's okay. He knows who he is.
Oh, damn, that escalated quickly. Holy shit. Okay.
Yeah. So I think like I am much more familiar with that, and so I would say like I don't know that I have a strong opinion on that. Okay. In other people's relationships, it was a really, really hard set of conversations for us, and he decided to stay in the kid's life, and that was really hard. That was a really, really hard thing, and I think it's important for both parents to be able to make those decisions together.
Yeah,
I agree. That's something that I agree with. But no, I do understand what you're asking, though. I do get it, I think it's something that they need to have a conversation about.
Yeah.
Honestly, like asking that, because that guy, I liked how seeing all you guys' heads turn. Because a lot of people finally don't even think about that on the other side of it.
Totally.
I think there needs to be something before that. We need to talk to people like, look, this is like, if you're not ready to have a kid on both sides, you should know from the jump. Yeah. Having sex with somebody the first night, you know you're not ready for a child.
Yeah.
So, and I think before, like, so that for me, if you bring that child to term, you're bringing that kid into a situation where you know it won't be a successful situation. Like, you know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah.
In the long run, it may not be great for the kid. Yeah. So that needs to be a conversation between people. It's like, look, you know, you just met this person. You really want the kid. That's why I'm so pro-choice. You know, like,
and I think
mistakes, but you didn't look like it's your decision to keep that going on at the, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and I think also people understanding the importance of kids growing up in a two-parent household rather than in a full-on and even if they are divorced, still being interactive with both parents on equal levels. I agree.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't see that.
Yeah. And sometimes like women choose to have babies on their own, and like that works too. And I think the family support around you and like your community.
Yeah, if you have a proper community around that can actually help raise it.
I agree with that, but that's different.
Yeah. It is very different.
And like you were ready for that kid. Yeah. And you're like, I don't like a one night stand. I don't know if anybody's prepared for that. But
so that's why let's have comprehensive sex ed.
Let's have it out. Exactly.
Yeah. But it's also like sometimes birth control fails. That's why abortion's important.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
shit happens, and
you need the option. You know, we shouldn't make it a religion thing and make it a.
But like, use a condom. Yep. It's generally a good idea.
And at the end of the day, you should be able to make your choice.
Yeah,
whatever path you want to take, that's on you. You know.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll listen to the biggest
conversation. It isn't about the other stuff comes after the decision. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I agree. And that's what we're talking about today. Man, great conversation. A lot smoother than it used to be. So it's great. Had a few camera issues, but we're good. So, yeah, Maggie, it's great talking to you.
Thank you for taking the time to come in.
Yeah, this is kind of last minute, so I appreciate you just having time in your day to hang out with us.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can get on here again and talk about some of this stuff. I have other questions, but I know people got stuff to do, so yeah,
Well,
it's a good time.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah. Maybe we could actually bring you back with some other people because I think it'd be a really good, engaging
Yeah,
conversation.
big. Let's get Nick and you in here. Maybe somebody else with a different opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We could just do like a panel on etiquette.
Yeah, I honestly feel like unfortunately, I feel like today, like, damn, an hour wasn't enough because there's way more we could have gone into, but
it wasn't enough. I feel that every conversation. So, yeah, we gonna talk off camera.
Yeah.
Well, this is an after show now.
yeah. Get us over on Twitch and Rumble, guys.
There we go. We're doing the after show. But no, this is a good talk. You keep recording if you want, bro. But this is Maggie. I learned so much. A little disjointed, but these guys are helpful. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Do a sign out on it.
huh?
We're gonna do an official sign out.
Yeah, we'll sign off, man. Thank you for joining us for the Gyst Rewind Podcast. Appreciate y'all and stay tuned.
Peace.
What up? What's good with y'all, man? Thank you for joining us again for the latest episode of the Gyst Rewind Podcast. Huge thank you to Judd and Lars for helping out with the cameras. Thank you to Lee for being my co-host and kind of keeping the conversation going and checking audio. And a big thank you to Maggie stopping in, sharing her story, and just talking about what she's passionate about, which is, the right form and truth, what she went through with her body. And the big theme I got in this conversation was, your duty. It kind of felt like when speaking with Maggie, she felt like it was her calling to be doing what she's doing, to be involved in politics and giving back to her community. So go find what you're passionate about, because it's your duty to do that. It's your duty to help out not only yourself and your family, but your community. But again, thank you again for joining us for this conversation with the Gyst Rewind Podcast, where we bring context to culture. And, till next time. Peace.